Gotcha.
I got to tell you this: what Corey is saying here. So Corey's wife Amanda has worked for us for a very, very long time. I hear all the secondhand stories of Corey's car escapades. Corey, you don't lose money on cars very often. When you say this, that like resale value is something that you factor into when you buy these cars. Is that correct?
Not just Porsche, with almost every car I buy. Cars are a depreciating asset. They're not something that you normally make money on, and sometimes you have to be willing to lose the money. If you love cars, you just go, fine. If I sell it for $0 when I'm done, I'm buying it.
Because you enjoyed it.
This GT3, if it was worth $0, it's totally worth it to me. It's an amazing experience. I love the car. But yeah, I put a lot of thought into what cars I buy so that I don't lose money. And then I'll also, as a guy that's married, you can justify it to your wife much easier. If I go,
all those stories. Yes.
if I go, this car was worth $230,000, should go, this is almost as much as our house. And I would say, okay, but the thing is the day it got here, somebody offered me $300,000 for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a huge factor in whether, like, if you, let's just say, I don't want to pick on another brand, but let's just say a Mercedes S63 that's $220,000. And then 1.5 years later, it's worth $110,000.
Right.
That doesn't work for me. I don't care. Like, it's not necessarily the money, but it kind of is, because I can't invest that. I can't continue to have other cars if I'm losing $100,000 in a year and a half on a car. I can't do that. I have to keep cars that are expensive, but then I can also afford other ones that will hold their value. So I have an E46 M3 that I picked up for a decent price, but they hold their value. They're actually going up in value right now. I have a 1949 Mercury, which is an old lead sled that I've wanted for years from that movie Cobra. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Long time ago, and that one of those, it's crazy. Those things are however much you want to make them. Like, you put $50,000 into them or $100,000 into them, they can be worth $250,000. I mean, they can be worth a lot of money if you do them right.
Well, like you said, you started off with an Infiniti. That was kind of where your journey with this. You've done this because I know about 5 or 6 of them. And the time I've been working at Utah Legal Group, you've constantly flipped these, and that's how you got to flying to Germany and doing this. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I took a leap of faith on one of them. I really did, because, I mean, when we really think about it, the amount of money that you need to make every year to reasonably justify a $200,000 or $250,000 car is a lot, right? I mean, for the most part, if you're talking to any financial advisor, which I'm not, and I spend my money stupidly, if I'm being honest. I could probably retire a lot sooner if I didn't do this, if I didn't love cars so much. But so my journey started with, basically I started to pay off my lower end cars, my small cars, for $20,000, whatever, and I'd sell it for $25,000. Like, I put some money into it, but I'd have a Dodge Challenger and I'd make it really cool and sell it to somebody that wanted all the stuff I put into it. So I'd make a little bit there, and then I would get up to like a BMW M4. Bought that, had that paid off, and then I decided, you know what, this car's worth $50,000. I'm just going to make the plunge to a GT3, just straight to a GT3. I found one, and the market was right at the time. Found one for $119,000, and I'm like, wow, that's a big jump. I don't know if I should do that, but I do know they hold their value, so let's take a chance. So what I did is I sold the M4 and I pocketed the money. I just kept the money in my account, the full $50,000, right? So I've got that, so that and I did a loan on the GT3 for the full $120,000, like, just full thing there. And the payment was more than I'm even close to comfortable with. But I said, you know what? I'll try to make the payment with what I make every month. But if I fall short, or if I'm in trouble, I'll use this nest egg of the $50,000 I got to put toward that car every month. But if I do make it, I'm still going to put at least $1,000 of that toward it, so that it pays it off faster. And just so happened, what I got it for was a really good price, because 2 years later, COVID was in full swing and cars went through the roof.
Right.
And so I ended up selling it for $160,000, like almost 2 years later. And then I was able to acquire an RS, which is like the higher model. So a GT3, you have an RS, which is a really high model of it. That's the top one. I was able to acquire that for a really good price, and I drove that for 10,000 miles and sold it for almost $20,000 more than I bought that one for. So then it just keeps on compounding to the new one. I was on the list already. I was on the list before I even bought my first one. I'm on the list like, okay, maybe I'll get one of those one day. Might as well just be on there. And even if I can't afford it, I'll sell my spot. I'll sell my spot for $10,000 to someone that doesn't want to wait.
Oh wow.
You know, like as
idea.
a plan in case I can't afford it. That's fine. I mean, if I can't, it is what it is. But I was just fortunate enough to be able to sell those cars and then put money down on this one to where it makes it kind of an affordable car. It's $230,000, but like it's somewhat affordable for me because it's not that much money anymore.
Well, and like you said, the 2016s, they're already doubled in that. So is this car one that's projected to it's gonna go up in value?
It's tough to say. You never know. It's like predicting a stock. I don't know. Who knows what? Because those 07s that I really loved, they dipped down. They were like 140 brand new. They dipped down to like 95,000 about, let's just say 10 years ago maybe. And then now they've just shot through the roof. So now they're like in the $350,000, $400,000 range. And the models above them, like the RS models that are a few years newer, they're like almost $1 million.
Oh my God.
So you never know which cars are really going to increase in value. But I know GT cars will always hold their value. Always.
So it won't go down. It's just a matter of.
Yeah, and if it goes down, it may go down a little bit, but it'll never be that swing of like you paid $230, it's only worth $100. It'll never happen.
How do miles play into that?
Miles used to play into it a lot. Now that COVID's occurred, people started driving their cars because you couldn't get new ones. New
Right.
cars weren't available for 2 years, right? So they started driving them more and more and more. So now every GT car has quite a few more miles. So it's not so much of a stigma anymore to put 20,000 miles on a vehicle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's better to have a 2,000 mile car for resale value, but if you have 20, it doesn't hurt you. Like before, you'd have 2,000 miles on a $100,000 car, and it'd be worth 150 because you kept it in like really pristine condition.
Right.
You put 20,000 miles on it, it's worth 120. Still worth a lot of money, just not as much as like it would have been if you kept the mileage low. There's not that much of a penalty anymore for putting miles on. So I had 49,000 miles on my RS, which was one of the highest mileage RSs in the whole country because I took it to San Francisco, up to the Redwoods, to Oregon and back, Lake Tahoe, Crater Lake, all sorts of places because I want to enjoy the car.
Sure.
Right?
The fact that 49,000 is the highest in the country is fucking mind-blowing.
It's crazy.
Well, but are they factoring in track miles with that? Because track miles and street miles are two completely
That's
different
very
things.
fair.
They are, but there's no way of knowing. Only
Yeah.
way we know is to just evaluate the car when it's for sale and go, okay, how does this car look? And mine was perfect. It was a bunch of highway miles, so it was fantastic. And I had 2 layers of PPF and wrap on it.
Nice.
It was like the paint was flawless when I pulled that stuff off. So it's 50,000 miles, but it looked brand new.
Huh.
So, and I had to take a hit on it for the mileage. I really did. I mean, if I had low mileage, it would have been worth like $220, but I ended up having to I sold it for $180, which isn't a huge deal because I got to enjoy the car.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It is crazy though to think 50,000 miles on a $200,000 car. Oh, you're up in your high mileage now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's almost worthless. It's not, which is nice.
But they're good machines, right? Mileage. You could take these cars to 100,000, 200,000 miles, no problems,
For
right?
sure. I mean, there's no evidence of a GT3 being that high in mileage. There's just none out there. But the other cars that Porsche has, definitely. They have 150, 200,000 miles. I've got one I worked on today that was 336,000 miles.
Holy
It's
cow.
still running perfectly. It needed a little bit of work, but it was fine.
For 300,000, a little bit of work is still
Yeah.
a bargain, right?
Yeah, totally.
Amazing.
You had questions formulating over there?
Oh, I'm just doing the math. It's just,
He's trying to figure out what your net worth is
my
now.
my German was sticking out a little bit.
What are you trying to figure out?
I was just thinking like about your first car and then rolling it over and then the $50,000 into the account and then paying. You're making a monthly payment on that one. You had it for so long, so you of course increased your equity in that position, and then rolling that one forward, and that means that you were taking this much into the next car. Just kind of, I love that shit.
An interest rate it's a huge thing though too, because this new interest rate on this new car is way higher than my other ones. I just had to do it because you have to take a higher interest rate for the German delivery. It's for whatever reason they charge you 1% more APR to take German delivery. it's just a thing, and you have to pay for the car before you even take delivery. It's one of those weird things, but it was worth the hit. I couldn't just go, oh, now I got a chance to get this car. I'm not going to do it because it's $40, 40 more dollars a month.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah, well, and plus, I'm not figuring any of the finance charges and all the other crap they like to tack onto that.
Oh yeah.
And it adds up quick. But I'm an investor, and I roll houses. I do this with homes, and so when you're talking about cars, like I go into the ROI mindset, like how, but I don't. I didn't get to drive it to Washington. You know what I mean? It's just it's just parked over in West Valley City. There's no heart in it. It just is what it is.
Totally.
But,
and it's an investment, though. It's something you have to sacrifice for if you want it. Like,
sure.
It's not for everyone.
Oh yeah.
Like my wife, for instance, she thinks I'm absolutely crazy for doing it. She trusts me in managing our finances because I've done well with them, but she thinks I'm crazy for wanting to just spend this much money on cars and just go drive around, go see the country. I like to do that. It makes me feel good. I like driving fast. I like hitting 190 miles an hour. I just like doing that. So, and you can't do that in a Camry, right?
Right.
You just can't. You got to buy the right car to be able to do that in.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, I just, not to get to a morbid point, but when you're laying there and you're taking your last breath, you're not thinking, I wonder how much money I have in my checking account.
Right.
Thank
God. I'm dying with $250,000.
I had a wonderful experience doing something I wanted to do in something I wanted to do it with someone I wanted to do it with. That's what fucking matters. None of the other stuff matters at the end of the day.
Totally.
And so I respect. That's amazing. Good for you. I love that.
And my theory is it's along those lines too. It's just that if I'm not taking away from my kids' future, if I'm still putting in for my daughter's college fund, I have my retirement set up with my Roth IRAs, my 401k. Not wealthy by any means. It's just that if I have that all set up and I always contribute to that all the time, and my cars don't affect that negatively, then whatever I want to spend on cars, I justify as that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Because if I die tomorrow, I know that my wife can sell my cars and my life insurance and how much we have, and she'll be fine for the rest of her life right now.
Yeah.
Not lavishly, but she'll be able to live on whatever I leave her for the rest of her life. So that makes me feel okay spending these crazy amounts, because I should be making $2 million a year, right? If we're talking about how much you should make to afford a car like this, because you shouldn't sacrifice as much of my income as I do for a car. It's silly, but it makes me happy, brings me joy. I don't want to sell my cars and move to somewhere on the East Bench for $2 million for a house and just go home and I just have a 96 Celica because I can't afford anything else, and I just live in my cool house to show people. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. Well, you're talking to a bunch of guys that own motorcycles.
Yeah, I was
so
going to say.
Yeah.
I have a very cool bike, and I eat a lot of chicken and rice.
Worth it. Worth it. I love that. Well, if you're looking to do this, so let's say that I'm thinking, wow, I could build equity in a car. Like, how did you achieve the knowledge to do that successfully? I can tell you how I did it with real estate. I can tell you how I came to the point where I'm like, that's a solid investment. That's a good deal. Like, how did you build that wealth of knowledge?
Mainly just my love of cars, my studying. It's not even really studying like every night about cars. It's just like going through and knowing like which models I like. I always call it a curse, to be honest with you, because let's just say that we'll take my 49 Merc, for example. Cobra was the reason why I wanted this, because it was such a cool car. But a 49, a 50, and a 51, they're 3 years that are very, very special in the Mercury world. And there's a 48 that's behind it that looks nothing like it.
Totally different animal.
Could pick that car up for $5,000 and redo it, make it all nice, and have a $20,000 badass old classic. It'll never be worth very much money. I don't like it because it's expensive. I like it because of what I see, what I look at, and I go, okay, this car is what I want. And it just so happens to always be this expensive thing that I hate. Actually, I hate that it's so expensive that I love. I wish I loved something else.
Yeah.
But it's like this curse of like, I just want that thing that I want, and even if it's too much money, I still am going to figure out how to make it happen and make it work. But also, I take into consideration, is it going to be worth something to somebody else? Am I just liking this because I like it and I'm the only one? Because if I am, that sucks. If I'm paying $50,000 and no one's willing to pay even $1,000 for it, I may have chosen the wrong thing. It needs to be desirable though too.
Yeah, it's
Right.
the 48. All of a sudden, you're into the model that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah.
like, I want an old truck. My wife's like, can we get an old truck? I'm like, yes, let's get an F100, 1955. Let's do that. So I go and look at them, and there's just shit boxes for sale for $40,000 in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
I'm like, I chose the wrong damn car again.
You have to have a tractor to load it.
Let's go with a 54. Oh, that one's $1,000. That means nobody wants it.
Yeah.
So there's part of me that like, and I'm not skilled enough to take some rust bucket out in like a field and redo it completely. I still have to have like, I can do a lot of mechanical work on it, but I can't do metal work on the car. So I have to be careful what I buy, but really that's just experience mainly. Like you in real estate in the market, right? You just know like, all right, well, if I'm on 20th East, this shitty house is still going to be worth way more than a baller house on 80th West in Magna.
Yeah.
You just know that.
Yeah.
So you just have to take that consideration of like, is it worth the money though? That's where I'm at as far as like trying to find a house is because I've wanted to move for a long time, but everything I find, I'm like, I've grown up in Salt Lake for so long. The house isn't worth $1.5 million. It's not worth 800 grand. You're like, 800 grand is still a lot of money for a house. It's still a solid mortgage, especially right now with 8% interest.
Right.
Like I don't want that old house that was like maybe 225 10 years ago, right? We're not talking about Great Depression prices. It's like 10 years ago, these houses were really, really affordable. Then all of a sudden they just jumped up like crazy. So it makes it to where no one can move.
Yeah.
Unless you're really willing to dedicate your life to that real estate, to buying that real estate, and that's important to you. You make it for money, or you just want that for your kids to be in a different school or whatever. That's your sacrifice.
Or you started with that piece of crap, that $1,200 car. That's the thing. Like that's how it works. Is like I didn't start with that house. You know what I mean? But I started with that $1,200 car that you're talking about that you made a little bit on, and you start to grow it. And so you can't jump in. You can't jump into the middle of the pool.
No.
You can't just walk up and buy that car. Not a regular person. And most people can't walk up and buy that house. But if you're doing this, if you're doing it, well, look where you are. It's amazing. And so I always tell people, like, whatever it is, get started doing it.
Yeah.
To all my employees, I make them do 401ks.
Yeah, get started.
Every single one of them, they start. I'm like, hey, I'll give you 6 months, but we're going to start taking 6% into your 401k that goes to you. I don't care if you're 19 years old.
Pay yourself.
We're doing that for you.
Yeah.
Right.
And even if you don't like the idea of that, you're going to thank me for it later. I promise you.
Yeah.
I didn't start till I was 26, which I was still relatively young to start that. But it makes a huge difference. Time is a huge. Even if you only put $200 in, or $100 every paycheck, just do that. It will accumulate over time, and it's a smart thing to do.
It's the secret as I'm growing older. It's what is that book called? The Atomic Habits. Have you read that book?
Yeah.
Have you read that book?
Fantastic. Yeah.
Atomic Habits. It's great.
Atomic Habits.
It just talks about these tiny little things that you start to do, and when you're 26, and then when you end up being 52, all of a sudden you're like, man, look at
That
how
worked
far
out.
Look how far I've traveled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
so I
and
love
barely
that.
even notice it, right? Like
Yeah.
and the strange thing is too is you notice it's obviously before tax money when you're talking about Roths and
Yeah.
401ks. It's before tax money to where you put in even 10%, right? Even 10%. It sounds like a high number when you're like, oh, that's 10% of my whole income. It's not even very much. Like you get used to like living on what you make
Oh, yeah.
really easily. It's not, and then that little 10%, even though it's small, 25 years down the road,
You're a millionaire.
it's crazy. It makes
Yeah.
a huge difference.
Yeah.
It really does.
And I like how you said that. You need to pay yourself first. That's what you said. That's what I tell my employees. And you need to pay yourself first. And that's what they're doing. They're paying future Rob.
self. Yep.
Because, I mean, as a young guy,
You don't think about it.
Yeah.
You think like I'll live forever.
beer
you
and
know
chips.
that, but
yeah,
yeah.
that's where it goes. And then you wonder, where'd all that money go?
Yeah, you spend $20 on your lunch, whatever. Like you go to Pretty Bird, which is an awesome chicken place, right? But it's a $17 sandwich.
No,
You're like, cool.
we can't afford that.
About the challengers.
But you do that and don't really think about it, and then go, you know what? It's not like I want you like to skip lunch or just go cheap on lunch, whatever. But like, you're $17. It's not a big deal, but you put the $17 somewhere away, and then you put another $17 next Friday when you're going to go to Pretty Bird instead. And all of a sudden, you put $100 a month. It's not a huge deal, but over time, it becomes a really, really huge deal. And I've learned that too over time. I'm 42 now, so I've been doing it for 16 years. And it's not that long, but it's amazing how much gets accumulated in there just after 16 years of
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Well, I love that.